At some point, because it is a workshop, I'm going to be asking you to work in small groups. So if you're currently sitting on your own, you've got about 15 or 20 minutes to edge slowly towards somebody else, okay? So in about 20 minutes, make sure you're sitting somewhere near somebody else. The inspiration from this talk came from a variety of places. The first one was that my colleague Nikki, who is down there, Nikki and I were asked to do some predictions for a website about where we thought education was heading in the next 20 years, I believe, which is actually very, very hard considering the pace of change for the last even 5 years, I think. It also came from seeing lots of discussions online and at conferences on the future of something. A lot this year on the future of publishing, and you'll see a few more events like that, talks over the next 2 or 3 days are about that particular subject. Looking at how technology's changed very rapidly in the last 5 years, particularly in terms of mobile and handheld learning, and thinking that actually we're in a big, big period of flux at the moment, particularly with educational technologies. Nobody knows where we're going. We've realized, of course, that the £8 billion that we spent on interactive whiteboards has probably gone down the pan, never to be recovered. But we're trying to think about where we're going now. So that's kind of a little bit of history behind the talk. I've been thinking about various areas, publishing, challenges that we may have with technologies, training that's necessary, hardware and software, all sorts of things. And I realized when I sat down to plan the talk that I had way, way, way too much information and too many slides. But then I realized that actually all of the slides are equally important. So I thought, instead of having to make the choice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a slide for every point that I want to talk about. And then I'm going to put in a little macro into PowerPoint that randomizes the slides. So I actually have no idea the order that they're going to come up in the time allotted. And at the end, you'll be able to get a PDF file that has actually all the slides in it anyway, so nobody loses out, and we get a bit of an element of chance, which is fun, I think. So I shall now engage the randomizer. You can all use this time to ponder. I'm pondering what the next slide's going to be. Aha! The randomizer has completed its task. And apart from the next slide, all the other slides are now in a completely random order. So let me explain what I'm going to ask you to do in this talk. What we're going to do, basically, is conduct a SWOT analysis of educational technologies in the future. Okay? I'm going to go through some things, some trends, some gadgets, some approaches to technology. And what I'd like you to do on your own, to begin with, while I'm talking, is you're going to need a piece of paper. Oh, sorry about that. I know it's a technology talk, but you will need a piece of paper. And what I'd like you to do is to just divide your piece of paper into 4 columns. The first column is strength, second, weakness, third, opportunity, and fourth, threat. So SWOT, a SWOT analysis. And as I go through, in a very, very quick and cursory manner, a variety of things, I'd like you to think about what it means to you personally, as in your professional life. Not for your organization, maybe, but for you. You know, if you're a teacher, you may find one of these things an opportunity that perhaps a publisher might find a threat. So which column would you put these things in yourself? Is that all clear? Excellent. I wish it was for me, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so here comes the first random slide. So, future trends. One of the future trends, I think, is this idea of shared study, of basically of people getting together and producing language study opportunities between them. So you may have things like online language exchanges. These things are already happening, actually. Online language exchanges where perhaps a native speaker of Chinese gets together with a proficient speaker of English, and they come together and they share their knowledge and teach each other. You'll also find around this kind of use of technology. You'll find platforms where people can sell their services as teachers. Is anybody actually teaching online through one of these platforms? So you sign up, you say, I teach French and I want to charge $15 an hour. And then people sign up for your classes. And these platforms work a little bit like Amazon or eBay. So if you're very, very good at it, you get good recommendations, you get lots of reviews, and then people come back to you again and again to hire you as a teacher of a certain language. So that's one of the things that's becoming much, much more common. What you need to do while I'm thinking and talking is put that in one of those 4 columns, in its potential impact on you. Okay. The second one is technology affordances or opportunities for self-study. What I've put up there is actually it's a clip from a video from a company who are producing an app for iPhones and Android phones. It's called Infinite English. It's actually a very, very clever idea. What Infinite English does is it allows you to go out onto the internet and pull in texts in your chosen area of expertise. So, for example, if you're a lawyer and you want to improve your legal English, you can go and find texts online, legal English texts, and import them into this application. And the application will then do a few things. It'll read the texts out for you. It'll give you a chance to practice your pronunciation and compare it with the reading. It'll prepare you gap fill and comprehension exercises and all kinds of things. So this is automated study materials, but infinite quantities of study materials based on your preferences and your likes. The kind of personalized language learning content that perhaps publishers dream of offering, now being done automatically by this app, Infinite English. One of many apps that allows people to study languages online. Is anyone studying a language using an app on their iPhone or Android? Excellent. And keep your hand up if it's going really, really well and you feel you're learning a lot. Okay. Well, no, actually, that's 50-50, which quite surprises me. I've been following a friend's attempt to learn Spanish using one of the applications, and he was delighted that he'd learnt the phrase, I cook the chicken. And I said, in 23 years in Spain, I never once heard anybody in Spain utter that expression. No one, in fact, no one asked, who cooks the chicken in this house? Oh, I cook the chicken. She cooks the noodles. Okay, another opportunity, threat, whatever. Self-publishing, personal publishing. This is Paul Emerson's site. I very much doubt that Paul's in the audience today. But increasingly, technology is allowing people to bypass certain channels, publishers, editors, all these kind of things, and actually get onto the market and sell a product without any of those kind of middle people. And that really means that you can address niche markets. I think Paul's probably a good example of that, of addressing a niche market, a market where you can be very quick to turn around good quality products, make them available online, and sell them without having to go through those traditional channels. So is that a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat? Kind of depends where you work, I guess. Okay. Disruption. You see, I'm pulling terms out of the ether here, and at some point you're going to make sense of them and tell me at the end what it's all about. Disruption, it has a big effect on our lives, actually, in education, because there are disruptive moments. Disruptive moments in terms of technology are moments when something comes along that radically changes the landscape, if you like. A disruption is not a mobile phone ringing in a classroom. That's a totally different kind of disruption. Disruptive technology is a big moment. The interactive whiteboard you may consider to be a disruptive technology. When it came along, it took a very, very familiar product and it replaced it with something which was potentially a lot more perhaps dynamic and varied in the way you could produce materials. That was a disruptive moment that actually did lead to a lot of disruption as people invested lots of amounts of money, and particularly places that bought interactive whiteboards without actually having electricity in classes and things like that. That was quite disruptive, I think, to lots of people. Mobile. mobile devices are disruptive. I think when the first smartphones came along, that was a disruptive technology moment because suddenly people could do on the move what they'd been tied to desks to do. And that has big implications, I think, for learning. If we can take, well, computer-based learning, if we can take it away from computer screens and make it more mobile, or at least a slightly smoother progression between what we do in class and what we do out of class, that's a potential disruption. What does it mean, for example, to curriculum planning? What does it mean to a year's study plan when these disruptive technologies can get in the way of the control that we traditionally have over materials, delivery, and consumption? Another big one, some of you may have been following this recently, this is a massive one in publishing, learning analytics. This is the idea that you can basically break down learning into measurable numbers and then rearrange those numbers to produce even better learning. As I said, I'm skating over a lot of these subjects. But at the moment, lots of companies are collecting lots of data on us. You probably know this. If you live in the UK, Tesco's probably know more about you than your family does. And they use that information in various ways. They'll offer you reduced X, Y, and Z, the kind of things you usually buy. They'll offer you all sorts of promotions because they know what you buy. And in bulk numbers, they know where to place things in supermarkets depending on how popular they are. So analytics are becoming incredibly important, as is what is known as big data. The more data you have, so the theory goes, the more data you have, the more you can tailor things to people's needs. I'm not here to make judgments on any of these things, but one of the things I think, even as a man who works in technology, one of the things I've always loved about teaching is the human element, the interaction, the people sitting down together and working things out. And I'm not sure that numbers are going to play a particularly helpful role in that. But many, many people disagree with me, and they're people who are far richer than me. So if you want to listen to somebody, I may not be your best bet if you want to make $1 million. You'll see that I'm putting links at the bottom of each slide. Those are links to further exploration. In this case, it's a link to an excellent and very recent blog by a man called Philip Kerr, who's done a lot of work on examining this kind of area in language learning. So this is facts and figures. Do facts and figures, does access to a lot of information, will it make us better at providing content and learning opportunities for students? Or is it taking away the very essence of language teaching, the human interaction? Okay, one of the other things that often comes up in technology, and one thing that is still hasn't changed an awful lot, is this concept of the digital divide. There are people around the world who have access to technology, and there are people who don't. Currently, I think it's only 37% of the world's population who have access to the internet. It's actually a relatively tiny percentage, a third. We tend to assume, many of us who live in countries like the UK or maybe wherever you live, if you have that kind of access, you tend to assume that everybody has that kind of access. And there is a general assumption in our profession, as in many professions, that because everybody has access to the internet, and because everybody has access to tablet computers and laptops and things, there is generally no need for certain old-style things, for example, like printed course books, because everyone has access to technology, so everyone can have an electronic course book. And you'll see those changes are coming along at the moment. Are they good or bad? Who knows? Time will tell. Another thing very, very popular in materials production, particularly popular with publishers who are moving towards perhaps an online or an electronic delivery system, is this idea of the reusable learning object. I think probably the analogy would be perhaps a photocopy in the old world. Those are reusable learning objects because every year when we go to do our present perfect class, we get those reusable learning objects out and we photocopy them again, and they go back in the file. What a lot of materials creation now is focusing on is breaking learning down into smaller and smaller chunks and smaller exercise blocks. And when you have millions of these objects, when you have millions of reusable learning objects, the theory goes that you can put them back together again, you can reconstitute things by taking these learning objects and sticking them together into course books or units or one-week modules or 4-week online courses. But the more you have, the more of these objects you have, the more chances you have theoretically of making these learning materials. And, more curiously, the more opportunities you have to gather big data as people will use these learning objects and analyze what they're doing. It's all good. Or is it? Collectives and people getting together to produce things. This is another thing that technology enables and is enabling even more as we speak. This is just one example, the Round. I'm guessing there's probably nobody from the Round in the room, but some of you will know Lindsay Clanfield and Luke Meddings. The Round being a collective where people get together and they publish books, electronic books. In this case, teacher development books. These are just 3 of them, an excellent set of titles. So written by someone who has a passion for the subject, edited by someone who knows what they're doing, and produced in a very cheap format and offered online. These are electronic books, and currently I have no financial interest, but they are currently on sale, I think, this week for our TEFL. So if you're interested in exploring them, well worth a look. So increasingly, again, people are taking back a little bit of the power in terms of materials production and publishing and things. And these are interesting ventures to watch. How long have I got? Let's see. Another 4 minutes and I'm going to stop. Okay. PLNs. Anyone know what a PLN is? Personal Learning Network. Connectivism and crowdsourcing. These are all online ways in which teachers, teacher trainers and practitioners in our field come together to talk to each other and, in some cases, learn from each other. Sometimes it's social, sometimes it's not. But now there are more opportunities for people to get developmental opportunities online in various forms, even if it's just to chat with someone. There are plenty of teachers who work in isolation or work in difficult circumstances where having a chat is not the done thing. And many of these ways, crowdsourcing information, asking the crowd for help with something, many of these things help those kinds of people. Technology is enabling this kind of thing. What does it mean for language education? I don't know. Are we going to see online teacher unions soon? That would be an interesting concept. Digital skills. A bugbear of mine, and I can probably see Hugh Della hanging his head now at the back and shaking it. But digital skills, I firmly believe that we need to be teaching these a lot more. If we're going to implement a lot of these technologies and things like mobile learning, digital skills are necessary. What do we do with the people who don't have digital skills? Do we ignore them? Do we rely on their parents doing it? The flipped classroom, you'll see it's cunningly denoted by flipping a photograph upside down. The flipped classroom, this idea of taking some of the hard work and some of the spade work out of the class and taking it outside the class. So, for example, there's no real reason in many, many respects, and much of the time, there's no real